Hello everyone, welcome to another Flesh and Blood video. In this video, we'll be taking a look at Kayo, Armed and Dangerous, the new brute hero from Heavy Hitters. Kayo is a brute that I have been waiting for a long time, not just because it's Kayo and I think Kayo is really cool, but because Kayo is a hyper-consistent brute that gets access to a lot of the things that Brute really needed. He doesn't have the direct kill pressure Reinar does, but when we talk about kill pressure, Kayo's is near unmatched, just from the sheer nature of way we can build his decks. Kayo Armed and Dangerous is 4 intellect and 40 health. Kayo only has one weapon zone, meaning we can only play a singular one-handed weapon. He gives attack actions plus 1 power while they are anywhere except the combat chain, which pretty much means we get access to a whole lot more 6s. And the first time we discard a card of 6 or more power, during each of our action phases, we make a might token. Something there just to have that discard mechanic. The might isn't too important, but it is a little stronger than you might think, because giving some pretty devastating hit effects that we do get to play in this deck, plus 1 power, pumping them up to 7, making them a breakpoint, is incredibly strong. For our equipment, our only weapon is a singular Mandible Claw. This is Kayo's main weapon. Some people have been experimenting with Ball Breaker. Personally, the way I play Kayo, and I will explain that a little more when we do talk about the deck, I find that Mandible Claw is generally the better option. The way I'm playing Reinar right now does include a Ball Breaker, playing 1 Claw and 1 Breaker, but when you only have access to 1 weapon, the Mandible Claw, being a lead or bridge, is just generally the stronger option instead of having a chain ender in the Ball Breaker. For the rest of our main equipment, Scowling Flesh Bag is probably just the best helmet in the game. I tried to, in Reinar at least, play Balance of Justice, and it is not good comparatively. Just play Scowling Flesh Bag. You don't need balance, you don't need crown. If you are a brute and have access to this card, you play this card. Final Spring Tunic. I have this up here in my main options because I do end up taking this a bit more than the Heart and Cross Strap. It is still in this deck simply because there are games that will go at lightning speed. Your ninja matchups will go very fast, your KO mirrors, things like that. But personally, I find Tunic always just nice to have, which is why it's up here and not in our sideboard. But we will talk about all of our other sideboarded equipment. Apex Bonebreakers is a new option from Heavy Hitters. This gives Guardian sort of that, or this gives Brute, sort of that Guardian fridge. We have access to a 2-block, 1-use helmet, and arms and legs that both have 2-block and Battle Worn / Temper, and of course Guardians right now are on Tunic themselves, so hey, we just got a full fridge right there. We don't have a chest piece, but do we really need it when Tunic exists? Apex Bonebreaker is another way to give us might tokens. This is a new card, so I will read it. When this defends together with a 6 power or more attack or card, create a might token. Very simple, it's 2-block and temper. This just gives us 2 free damage throughout the game, as well as giving us 3 health. A very good tool, one of the best cards that Brute gets this set. And then finally, the Scab Skin Leathers, just because they are the option for Brute. Of course, you can play Beaten Trackers. They are not in this list because we do have a lot of ways to give go again. That's kind of how you want to end up playing Kayo. But these will generally never get rolling unless we are in 1 or 2 matchups that we want to roll them, in which we are on Gambler's Gloves, which we'll talk about when we go to the equipment. But this is just here because it's a free 3-block in our shoe slot. It's a amazingly strong card for all Brute decks. Moving on to our extra equipment. I'm going to start with the Arcane Barrier. we are on Skullhorn as well as Norrund Gloves. Whenever we need one AB, Norrund Gloves are generally the better option. Norrund Shoes, I suppose, could be an option for 1AB matchups. However, do we really want to replace the Scabskin Leathers? I don't think so. I don't think Apex Bonebreakers are better than the shoes we are already playing, so Norrund Gloves will still remain the option. And unlike Levia, we can play a slower game. We're not going to die immediately. Levia plays AB1 simply because she wants access to more cards in her hand, always and always needs resources, but this deck really doesn't, so we can afford to play the AB3 for those Wizard matchups. This is really only coming in versus Wizard, so Kayo right now, and it's kinda needed because AB1 kinda means death right now. Hardened Crossstrap is an option for our aggro matchups. Any matchup that you will not get to activate Tunic twice, Hardened Crossstrap is the better option, simply because this gives you that 2 free resource right away. If there's a matchup where you ever get to activate Tunic 3 times, Tunic is better. That's simply when you want to decide if you want to play Hardened Crossstrap or not. Against Illusionists, Guardians, those type of decks, you'll want to play the Tunic, but against Ninjas, as I said, and other aggro decks, Kayo Mirrors, you'll want to bring in the Hardened Crossstrap. And then finally, a card that a lot of these Brute KO lists are not playing anymore is Gambler's Gloves, and I'm just not sure why. Gambler's Gloves is a card you kind of need when you play against Illusionists, since you need to roll Scabs in those matchups to actually deal with the auras. So Gambler's Gloves are just the best option we could be playing. So I don't know why we're not on them more often than not. I guess you could say Kayo can just run over those heroes, but when your opponent has a large amount of auras in play as Prism, or even has things like Passing Mirage in play as Dromai, and they're being very defensive, it can be hard to get through the wall of auras and dragons. And as someone who plays at a locals with a lot of Illusionist, you kinda need these. I would recommend keeping them in your list because these are oh so useful. Moving on, let's talk about the deck's main board. If you'll notice, this list is actually pretty similar to one of the KO lists that won a very recent event, ran by Yuki Lee Bender. A very good player, and she brought KO to, I don't think it was the first constructed event, but one of the first constructed events, and won with it, which for KO is great because that means he's good, but for Brute it's bad because that means this card goes away sooner, which means Brute will be actually unplayable when this card goes, which sucks. But as long as KO's good for the time being, that's fine. As I said, so this is very similar. However, I did make one substitution. We will talk about the rest of the list, but I want to talk about this one substitution first. Instead of Pack Hunts, I think Predatory Assault fills a similar role, but ends up having a better result. Predatory Assault is a card from Crucible of War. It is a same stat line, 2 costs for 6 at red with 3 block, and says, if you've discarded a card with 6 or more power this turn, Predatory Assault gains Dominate. Of course, these all have their different situations, but the main reason why I think Predatory Assault could edge out Pack Hunt is simply just because of its turn-ending potential. A lot of the time into Brute, players will either not block your whole turn, specifically into KO, will not block your whole turn, and then they'll try to block the last thing so they can see what they want to do. And that's perfectly fine. Because, I mean, that's kind of how you play against it when you're not threatened by Intimidates all the time. So when you're playing something like Pack Hunt, you're taking one card out of their hand that they can't block with now, and they can block with the rest and they get the card back. But with Predatory Assault, now you can threaten your opponent's life so much more because they can only spend one card. Which also, in most situations, we are discarding a card every turn. The windups all count. If we give a Savage Feast go again, a Bare Fangs go again, we play a Wild Ride, we play a Blood Rush Bellow, Predatory Assault just like gets Dominate and gets through so much damage. If our opponent has a D-React in Arsenal, sure, you could say Pack Hunt would be better, but also if we're not taking that last card out of their hand, Predatory Assault would still do more because they're going to spend a card and then the D-React to block the Predatory Assault, and then we took the D-React that they're not playing on a Swing Big or a Bare Fangs or a later turn when they would need it. Which is why I do think this card definitely has its upsides. Personally, I think it has a little more upsides. The other time Pack Hunt's better is late game if you're in a block off with your opponent and you are just throwing 2-card hands back and forth. Pack Hunt is technically better because you're not getting a discard as consistently, but when you end up playing this deck, you realize that you are pitch stacking a lot of windups. You're not discarding all of them, simply because if you can get an agility token already, or if you need the blue to take your turn, you're not going to get rid of the windup for nothing. So you'll have agile windups and mighty windups in your pitch deck. So if you can save enough armor and get away with it, you can throw a pred with Dominate, threaten their life total, and at that late stages of the game, if you can get away with it, it can just win the game for you. So that's all my reasons for Predatory Assault. Let's go on to everything else, because everything else is really basic. CNC, it's the only not brute card in the main board, but it's CNC, it's super good in KO, especially when we think about how KO's ability works. It pumps everything because it's a might token, which means CNC will come in for 2 for 7, which is very, very strong. Bare Fangs and Wild Ride are cards I really don't like simply because they don't block, but since this is a more aggressive brute deck, that's fine if they don't block. Bare Fangs comes in for a 2 for 9 most of the time, and then even replaces our might right after, making this in theory a 2 for 10. So a very strong effect. Wild Ride is a free go again effect, makes it really strong when we need to aggro down our opponents. Savage Feast is a replacement effect. This one is I'd prefer over what Wild Ride and Bare Fangs does. The reason I don't like them as much is because you draw then discard and not discard then draw. But Savage Feast, it is a cost to do so you can't play Savage Feast off a 2-card hand. But Savage Feast alongside a agility token just gives you so much ability to just play the game. Also, this costs 1, so off a blue pitch we can even come in with Claw after and then something else. It gives you so many more options, is what I was trying to say. Swing Big, just the best brute red attack in the game. You play brute, you play 3 of this. 2 for 8. It's simple, it's easy, it's very good. On to the yellows, and I guess this blue Agile Windup. Agile Windup. This is the best card in the deck. This card is nuts. The yellow one we'll see play in every brute deck, and the blue one sees play because we're KO. So Agile Windup is a very simple card. Stats don't matter. It has 6 power. Okay, that matters. It has a certain power value. Yellow is 6. So we're looking at that one. It has the instant effect to discard it and make an agility token. That is all the card does. You will almost never block with it. There are a few times that you do. There are a few times you attack with it. Those will almost never happen. You pitch it or you discard it. In KO, discarding it will make you a might token, which is great. In Levia, discarding it helps you fill your graveyard to banish things, and then you can banish this. In Rhinar, it gives you an Intimidate, which is super good. These also turn on your Claw because you're discarding a 6. These also let you just run your opponent over because you can make an agility and then next turn Savage Feast into Claw into any other attack and do a massive amount of damage. These are insane setup cards, and even going second, because a lot of people will go first into you and just not attack you, you can draw these and actually get to cycle your hand, making any brute deck sort of unsafe to go first against, because they just say, hey, great, going into my first turn, I have an agility token. An insane effect. This is one of the best cards in the entire set. This card's insane. We're on the yellows and the blues. I guess now I should talk about the blue thing. If you'll notice, there are a lot of blue 5s in this deck. And Recurrent. That is because Kayo makes all of these cards 6s in our hand, which means for all of our card effects, they are 6s, even everywhere else. So things like Beast Within, things like Pat Call can see them. Insanely strong. The reason why I like Kayo so much is because he can play so many more cards the other brutes can't, because he can play all these blue 5s. And there are a lot of blue 5s. Beast Within, another card I really don't like, but it works super well in KO. Since you're an aggressive deck, this just draws you a card. It doesn't matter if you take damage, and at most you'll take 2, and it sucks when you take 2 because your non-attacks are pretty important. But this card is absolutely insane. One of the best cards inside of KO. Bloodrush Bellow, the actual best brute card in the game. I think I've said that a lot this video. This is actually it. It's a 1-cost yellow. It has an additional cost to discard, and it gives your brute attacks +2. But if you discarded a 6, you draw 2, and it gains go again. Just insane. Lets you cycle through your deck, pumps up your whole turn. Even on its worst turns, it's still a claw for 5, plus an attack for 8, which really still isn't bad. So, this card, insanely strong. Super good. Even then, it gives you a might for your KO. Just puts in work. This is the best card. Looking at the blues, none of them really matter. We'll run through them real quick. Some of them actually kind of matter, but some of them don't matter. Assault and Battery's here because it has the upside of late game we might be able to make an agility token. Mighty Windups here for an extra 3 blue windups. The Might token is pretty good with Cast Bones, since we'd rather discard this into a Cast Bones than an agility, since we're going to get an agility from the Cast Bones anyway. Pat Call can let us see the top card of our deck for our Wild Ride and Bear Fangs. And I guess also Beast Within. Reckless Swing is Reckless Swing, and we're playing it because it wins games. It's a brute card that you have to play. One singular Riled Up is here because one blue Reincarnate is not going to do anything, and those are the only 2 things you can play in this slot. And I like Riled Up a little more because it can come in for more damage. That's the only reason why. Smash Instinct, because it is an Intimidate effect, late game they're good, and Smash Instinct Blue is good late game. And then Recurrent Blue, in case we get Humble, I think that's the one that removes your hero ability, or some other effect like that, and we still need 6s. Or none of these cards blocking are 6s, so we do need these as extra poppers in blue. They're good. You're only blocking or pitching them, though. You're never playing this card. Moving on to the inventory, the sideboard. This is where all the other cards are. This is your core. It's set up the same way that Yuki had it. This is your main board. You're always playing these in every matchup, and then you just add 12. The cards here are a little different, so we will be running through these. Assault and Battery comes in your slower-ish, not slower, but your matchups where they are going to go late, things that you need more consistent game plan for. Riptide, I'm going to be honest, is kind of scary when you're on this deck because, yeah, they get 2 of their traps turned on every attack. We're not on reaction, so those will never work, but they get a lot of trap damage off, and you're not blocking. So yes, you can kill them, but they're killing you while you're killing them. So it can get some scary situations. This lets you play a little more consistent. Because if we're going to get an agility every turn and a might every turn, I want it guaranteed every time. And that's what this card does. This is also just a 3 for 7, so it's a really good breakpoint. Cast Bones is insane. It's only in the inventory because there are definitely matchups we don't want it. I personally wouldn't play this into Kano because I don't want to show them my top 6. I don't want to show them that I have 4 reds in my hand and then they kill me immediately. That's kind of why this is here. Cast Bones, in every other matchup, though, comes in. We reveal the top 6. We make a might for each 6 revealed, which count all of our blue 5s because, well, they're all 6s because of Kayo. We get a might for each. And then if we have 6 might after that, we get an agility token. Really good with our windups. If possible, playable after a discard effect, because then we'll get a might. Makes it so we can actually reveal some non-attacks. This and the Bellow and the Reckless Swing are the only non-attacks in the deck. So we'll hit at least 5 most of the time. So, really good card. E-Strike is here. Even though it's not a brute card, it doesn't work with Blood Rush Bellow, it's still a really good card. Off of an agility token, this can come in for 5 draw card. This can still be 7, or even without an agility token, this can come in for 5 go again and just let you threaten bigger turns. And it's a good card in KO since you can discard it to all of your other effects to actually trigger them since it goes to 6. No Fear, 3 of it. This is a card that was only on 2 of in the original list, and people are only on 2 of. And I kind of don't understand that. No Fear is a card that inherently you wouldn't think would be good in aggro deck. However, in a matchup where you actually want to be a little defensive and that has some pretty big hit effects, No Fear is an insane card. This can just sit in your arsenal, and then when your opponent takes damage to try to hit you with a disruption effect, you just, No Fear, show you 4 attacks, prevent 6. I don't discard because all the cards are in banish, and I still get all my value out of my turn, which is why we're on 3 of this. I always would rather have it. Yes, there are some situations where your draw discards hurt you because you draw this and discard it, and yes, that's bad, but that's an inherent issue with the draw discards. You could have hit a Cast Bones or a Reckless Swing instead. This normally comes in matchups I don't want the Cast Bones, but there are some times where I would bring both in. It would really only be for Azalea, but Azalea is one of the few decks I haven't gotten to test too much against. I'm not sure if their disruption No Fear will be worth it against, because against Azalea, they're stopping you from playing things and not directly taking cards from you like a Bravo would. So in theory, No Fear would be pretty decent, but I think in that type of matchup, you just want to try to kill them before they disrupt you and not play for when they disrupt you. But definitely into Kano, this card's very good. Into Bravo, this card can be very good too. So I did decide to spring for 3 No Fear. Pulping is another draw discard effect, but it's here because it's Dominate. Sort of a similar reason to the Predatory Assault. It's Dominate. It's going to be able to chip through damage. Yes, if my opponent has a D-React, it stops my go again, but are they going to have the D-React? That's the question with this card, and this card just gets to come in, 6 Dominate, usually 7, go again, hit them for at least 4 or 3 or something. Really strong. This doesn't come in a few matchups, but mainly the matchups we want to bring in Assault and Battery, we won't be bringing in Pulping. These are kind of replacements for each other. The next 2 are cards we kind of always want to bring in, simply because they just kind of make our deck work. Normally we'll end up bringing in Cast Bones, Pulping, Runner, Send Packing. E-Strike sometimes instead of one of them, and then Assault and Battery usually when we don't want Pulping. But Runner, and Send Packing are cards we'll generally always be bringing in, kind of with the Cast Bones. Runner is a 2-cost 6, and it's very simple. When we attack with it, if it has go again, we make an agility. This is the perfect opener for our deck, since we can Runner, off an agility, get another agility. Sort of what I said with the Assault and Battery, extend our lead with agilities, make sure we can get it more consistently. This says if we have it, we have it for next turn. Really good effect, one of the best cards you could be playing. It blocks well, it's still a 2 cost 6, so a 2 card 6, really strong. I kind of wouldn't play KO without this card. I thought originally this card was a bit of a sleeper, and now that it's actually being played in Kayo decks, I'm glad to see I was right with this card being as strong as I thought it would be inside of a deck like this. And then Send Packing is sort of that other hit effect I talked about when I said hit effects. This card is just CNC. This is a 3 for 6 at yellow. When it attacks, you banish to your opponent's arsenal, and when the chain link resolves, if it didn't hit, they get the card back. It's pretty much meaning if it did hit, it's going to stay banished. You also get to see their arsenal since it's banished face up, which is really strong. This card coming in for 7, again, is a breakpoint like CNC. And where, yes, they can play D-Reacts on it, they won't be able to play one from Arsenal because we just banished their Arsenal. So Send Packing will usually come in. It's just another yellow. Other than that, it's a good 2-card hand if your opponent's saving an Arsenal. They have to block it if they want to keep the card, and if they want to keep the card, we get to know what it is. So Send Packing is a card we will be bringing in pretty much every matchup. It's just here because there could be a few cases we don't. And then the last card in the deck, 2 of Smashing Performance. Man, I hate this card. It only comes in versus Mechanologists because it's like sometimes Mech is a bad matchup, but you can just like kill them probably. It's here because we don't play any items, and against decks with items, this is insane. I might consider this against Kano too, because you can break their Epots and their other one, the Deja Vu, but that's about it. It's a yellow as well, so bring this in against Kano too, but that's literally it. This card comes in against decks that play items to get their items. You don't want Arc Smash because it's a non-attack action, and this does work well with KO because it's a draw discard, so we get a Might, and then this comes in for 7. And sure, it's great. It's fun. That's why it's in the deck. That is all. That is the whole Ow. That is the whole list. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. In building this list, sort of was on a similar idea. I originally wasn't on the no block things. I wanted to play a lot slower of a KO list, but then I realized if I'm going to play a slower brute, I'm just going to play Rhinar. So I did just end up going full into the aggro stuff, and the aggro stuff definitely works. Of course, this list is very similar to all the other aggro lists. Looking at other lists, clicked on like 4 different lists on February, and they were the exact same as Yuki's list with different names. So if something's good, people are going to copy it. Of course, I did change it a bit. I think Pred's a little better. I changed the sideboard a little bit. A card this deck is not on is the 2 cost 6 power Clash for Agility. I think it's Clash of Agility. Yes, it's Clash of Agility. Yuki's list is on 3 red Clash of Agility and 2 yellow Clash of Agility, which I can understand in some cases because you're KO, you're going to win clashes, and it gives you an agility. However, if you're blocking with it and then you have a 3-card hand or a 4-card hand, yes, if you have a 4-card hand, you save 3 health, you win a clash, you get a 4-card hand of agility. But what happens next turn when you have a 3-card hand and you're throwing weapon attack, if even? Like, I feel like that's not good. So yes, when you set up 4-card hands after you block with it is great, but when you don't have those, which sometimes this deck won't because you're playing your whole hand out, it's not good. So we're not on them. They became the 1 extra no fear, the Gambler's Gloves, and I think the E-Strikes. I don't remember if Yuki was on E-Strike, but I think it was the E-Strikes. I don't think they were originally in her list, but I put them in because I think these work a lot better in those situations, because in those situations, you're going to block with just something else, and then if you have a 4-card hand set up after that, you can E-Strike, go again into your other attack. And yes, it's a little less flexible because you need the other thing in your arsenal, or the E-Strike to be in your arsenal, but they're good arsenals. A good attacker and E-Strike is a great card to put in your arsenal. So, with all that, hope you all enjoyed. Next week, we take a look at Olympia or Betsy, and I heard that Olympia was doing pretty well. I did not see what type of Olympia it was, if it was hatchets, or if it was decimator, or even if it was just attacks, like 3-cost attacks. So I'll have to look. I think either way, I am going to be showing you a Hatchets Olympia list. That is the one that I have been testing with a little more. And I think definitely can turn out pretty well. So I will be showing you that Hatchets list, but Olympia, really strong. We might do Olympia, not super duper strong, but still strong. So we'll probably do Olympia next week, and then we'll round it out the week after with Betsy. And then I'm not sure what we'll do post that point, but hey, we got through all of the new heroes at that point. We can start doing things like Rhinar or other decks that got some cool cards. But with all that, I hope you all enjoyed the video. I hope you all have a good day, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.